Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So if you saw my recent video, I did a whole paint correction and ceramic coat on my IS300. I did as best I could by compounding it and polishing the paint. Then I ceramic coated it to protect it a little bit better than it was before with no wax or anything on it. So in today's video, we're gonna go ahead and take apart the trim here on the door. I'm gonna take apart my mirrors and I'm gonna take apart my door handles and this little black trim over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint all of that with some SEM trim paint to get it all back to OEM quality again. So stay tuned. So these little belt moldings on this car is notorious for rotting and getting all oxidized and all the plastic coming off of it. And you can't really wrap it or do anything with it because it's actually rubber, because it actually goes right here to the window. It's actually one full piece that's rubber. So the only thing you can really do is replace them. They're like 250 bucks from the dealer, which I wasn't really prepared to pay for. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to take them off today, sand them down and paint them with SEM trim paint. I'm gonna go ahead and take these door handles off. The previous owner repainted this car to GGP, which is Graphite Grey Pearl. It used to be Intensa Blue Pearl. They did a little half-ass job and they painted all the little trims right here, which are supposed to be black. So while I'm in here to take apart the mirror, I'm gonna go ahead and take this out and paint that area behind there to make it look at least a little bit OEM. And over here in the mirrors, you can see it's got rock chips from 20 years of use. I'm gonna go ahead and take the mirrors apart, sand that down and paint that some trim black to get it all back to looking good again. Same with this little trim around the edge and then the little ring around the mirror. I tried to ceramic coat that and kind of clean it up a little bit, but it's still kind of rotting and faded. So I'm gonna go ahead and mask the mirror up and try to paint that, so get that all black again. I would do this crown too, but I ended up actually buying a new one of these when I was ordering a bunch of stuff from Japan. So on a different video, I'm gonna go ahead and powder coat these arms black again. I'm gonna change the wipers to some OEM aero wipers from the 2IS. I'm gonna replace that piece and I'm gonna replace the rear wipers also. This trim back here is not as bad as the belt molding over here. As you can see, there's not that much oxidation on it. I actually put a bunch of ceramic coat on here to see if it would restore it, and it did kind of restore it a little bit. If it gets worse in the future, I might mask that and paint that the trim black also, but for now I'm pretty good with this. I'm just gonna keep up with it and just make sure I ceramic coat it or actually gloss it up every once in a while to make sure it stays nice and clean. So to remove the belt molding, you actually have to take apart this one Phillips screw right here, and then you got to remove the mirror on the front one, and the belt molding actually just slides back one direction. I forgot if it slides forward or backwards. Once you slide it, it just pops right up, and that's how you do it without bending it or damaging it. On the rear, you could take apart the belt molding with just the one screw right here, and that's all you really need, and then you just slide it forward, I believe, and you pop it off. For the rear, you don't have to take apart the door panel, but since I want to take the handle off to take care of that, I'm gonna go ahead and pop the door panel off also on the rear. Properly remove the mirror, you gotta actually remove the door panel, take apart your tweeter, and there's actually two wires, I believe, that go into the door panel, and the plug is like right here. So we're gonna go ahead and take apart the door panel right now and take that all apart. Since I'm in there, like I said earlier, I'm gonna take apart the door handle over here so I could paint that. So to remove the door panel on this car, there's a screw right here behind this thing that has a little cover. You wanna pop that out, it's a Phillips. There's another screw right here in the door handle or the door pull. I've never taken the door panel apart before, but on other cars, I think there's like a 10mm under here, but this thing usually just pops right out. So we'll go ahead and do those three and see if that's enough to pop this out. Usually the tweeter should just pop right out. There might be a harness that's under here that you have to pop out, but other than that, it should just pop right out. So I've got everything out. I unplugged the light down there and I got pretty much all this stuff loose. I'm having trouble with trying to get this trim off right here. I'm not sure if it actually comes off. Usually when you unbolt it, this little trim part pops off and then you can unhook the door handle or the cable from here, but right now it's getting stuck right here and I can't figure out a way to take this out without breaking it. So I'm gonna go look this up and see how you remove this. All right, so this trim does come apart. What you need to do is just basically get something under here and pop the little clip and then pull it forward and it should pop right out right here. Right, so I got this thing out. So to get it out, you actually have to get this thing under here and you pop the spot right here, right above where the lock is. And on the bottom where the handle is right there also. There's a peg that goes into these holes. And then on the back side, it hooks into the door with this thing right here. That's why it was so hard to take out. So now that we got it unbolted, it should just pop right out. Once you pop everything up, you just slide the back up right here and just kind of wiggle it out past the door handle here, and then just lift it out, and then you should be good there. A lot easier than on the 2IS. On the 2IS, I always have problems because this top bar always tries to stay into here, and actually it's easier to pop it out, but on here it came out pretty easy like most 90s cars. All right, we got everything apart. It's best to roll down your window. That way you have room to work with to get this belt molding out. So you want to do that. So now that you took the screw off, what you want to do is push this thing right here. So get to the edge of the trim and try to push it forward. It might be stuck depending on how old your door panel is or your door is. So you want to push that forward and you'll see the thing slide right there and move. And you want to move it as far forward as you can. And then what you want to do is you want to come up here and you just want to have some gloves on, grab the inside of here because the whole lip is actually wedged onto the door. So you want to just grab it right here and just lift it out and just slowly lift it. Don't pull too hard in one spot because you might end up bending it. So that's what you want to avoid, bending the molding. So you just want to do that. Just slide forward. Stuck right in the middle here. You just want to, there you go. So looking on the back side of here, you can see right here, those are the clips that are holding in the molding, and they actually tuck in on the little piece of rubber on there. So that's what you have to get cleared out so you can pop this thing out. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the back. I'm not sure if my window motor is bad back here or if the battery's dead, but this thing won't roll down, and I don't remember ever rolling the windows down back here. But I'm gonna go ahead and just pop this off and try it now. Since I can't roll my window down, I actually found an easier way. So what I did was I took my little pry tool here, I put it here, and I just basically tilted it towards the window and wedged it back, and it actually releases that bottom clip from that little rail that we saw on the front. You just kind of do that all the way back. Oh, there it goes. And it comes right off. So it's actually easier than that other one. So that comes right out there. Nice and clean, no damage. So for me to paint the trim, I'm taking this thing apart just to take this rubber off. This is what they did when they didn't remove this to paint the car, so they painted it over this rubber. So I'm gonna go ahead and just strip all the paint off of that and just paint this thing trim black again and make it look nice and clean. Other than that, I'm just gonna clean up the door handle and then put it all back together. I just took off my rear door handle. If you have to remove the rear door handle for any reason, here's how you do it. You have to remove these 3 bolts right here that holds the actual strike mechanism. You gotta remove this 10mm and then another 10mm screw up here that holds the rest of this, and you just slide that thing out of the way. And once you do that, you'll have access to this hole right here, which is the hard to reach screw. Once you get that screw out, the front one is pretty easy. The front one, you just remove that little black piece right here, and then you can reach that 10mm there easily. And then you just pull the door handle out after that. It's a lot easier in the rear than it is the front. And then once you do that, there is a bracket behind it, a reinforcement bracket that drops into the actual door you have to take care of. But other than that, it just pulls right out. All right, I ended up taking off all the door handles, and I really wish the old owner would have kept this car Intensa Pearl blue, but look at that. Such a shame that they painted this GGP. The Intensa Blue Pearl is much more unique and rare on the Sport Cross versus the Graphite Grey Pearl, and I wish they would have did that. But all this stuff right here, I've actually got a can of Dupli-Color that matches this same paint. I'm gonna go ahead and just spray all that just to clean it up and hide it a little. Same up here with the window sill, even though it's covered up by that molding. I'm gonna go ahead and paint that with the Dupli-Color just to hide it a little bit, just in case, all the way through here. But yeah, look at this. You get what you pay for in most paint jobs, and most painters are pretty lazy about stuff like this. So I took all the door handles over here, all the little trims, I took those off. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off all the old paint on here just to get it all black plastic again, and then I'm gonna scuff it up and paint it the same trim black that I'm gonna be painting this. All that old oxidation and everything on that rubber, we're gonna go ahead and just hit that with a Scotch-Brite, clean that all up. After that, I'm gonna clean it with some rubbing alcohol just to get all the oils and stuff off of it. Then I'm gonna paint it with the SEM. Over here on the mirrors, I'm gonna have to go ahead and pop off this back cover. You can take the back cover off here by taking the front mirror off. The mirror pops from the bottom. You just put a pry tool under here, pop it up, and it pulls forward. And then you can take the whole mirror out, pop this off. And after that, you could basically just paint the whole thing as one piece, or you could separate it by taking the screws apart and then kind of separating the mount from the mirror itself, except there's the mechanism and the wiring you have to deal with. I was able to take everything apart, so those mirror covers are actually not screwed in, they're actually just clipped in. They actually have two clips that really hold it in right here, and then two more that hold it on the corners here. As far as the actual mirrors go, I have heated mirrors on my Sport Cross, and it looks like this one must have been overheated at some point because all the little glue or whatever inside kind of melted out and it got stuck on the back side of the mirror and on the actual mount over here. It's not really any kind, it's like a butyl glue, so it's like a rubber glue that actually sticks to itself, so it's no big deal, but it's just a little bit of mess there. But other than that, that little trim around here that's fading that I wanted to paint, it actually pops off back here, so I can just go ahead and just pop those four off, take that trim off, and then just paint that separate and then snap it back on and not have to tape or anything. As far as this goes, I can do that exact same thing. Like, you got bolts here that take the trim apart away from the motor and everything, so I'm going to do that and see how much of this I could take apart, and that way I could just paint it cleanly. Alright, I was able to separate everything. I've got like 20 years worth of grime and dirt all over this thing. The reason why I can't separate it completely is because you have to actually unpin this to pull the wire through here and get it all through here. I was able to just take apart that end right there and pull the wire harness through, and I took all the pieces apart just to make my life a little bit easier. So now the next thing I need to do is just degrease everything with some super clean just to get this thing nice and clean again. And then I'm gonna sand these areas right here and then just basically scuff everything so I could spray it with the SEM trim paint and it all sticks. I got these all kind of cleaned up and sanded a little bit. These are my mirror mounts. This is the driver one. It's really bad. The pitting and everything is, you can see that's really obvious right there, that pitting that over the years of just neglect and old age. I gotta go ahead and fill that in with some putty and smooth it out so I can fill in all those holes and make this thing look good. On my mirror caps, I just had some imperfections here, some scratches that I ended up sanding down really good so it's smooth again. So I'm gonna go ahead and do all these edges with some Scotch-Brite before I put some Adhesion Promoter and then put the SEM on here. So before I start the prep on the side moldings here, I'm gonna go ahead and spray some super clean foaming degreaser on here. I'm gonna let it sit for a couple minutes. I'm gonna rinse it off just to make sure I clean everything nicely with water and degreaser to get all the dirt off of it. And then I'm gonna sand it down, let it dry, and then clean it with some alcohol before I spray it. I wanna make sure the prep is good on this so the paint actually sticks to this rubber. One of the things you probably wanna do before you even paint and do all that is you wanna squeeze these together, like the back part towards the front. That way this thing's skinnier. So that way when you snap it back on and it clips into the door properly, you wanna do that before you paint it so you don't mess it up, and you wanna make sure it stays on the car. I'm gonna let this stuff work its magic for a couple minutes. Don't let it dry too long, and then just rinse it off with a hose. All right, so to prep the belt moldings, we're gonna go ahead and sand it with a 400 grit. Once I'm done with the 400 grit, just to get rid of the major oxidation on the surface, I'm gonna go with a gray Scotch-Brite, and that should be good enough to prep it. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and wash it, let it dry, and then clean it off with some alcohol before I spray some adhesion promoter and then the paint onto it. So what I was using a Bondo 2-part putty. This is the putty that you have to actually mix to get it. So it actually set pretty quickly. It's like less than 5 minutes of work time. It's more like a 2 or 3 minute work time. This is compared to the putty that you just get it in the tube and you just squirt it on here. I didn't use that just because it's not the professional type. I like the professional type where you mix it 2-part. Anyway, so I got it on there, let it dry for 20 minutes. And then after that, we're gonna go ahead and sand this with the 240 to get most of this off, except for the pinholes. And then after that, I'm gonna sand it with a 400 to smooth it out, and then it's ready for primer after that. All right, we went ahead and sanded it down. As you can see, we got it mostly off. All these little high spots were like spots where we couldn't get it off, but it's nice and smooth now. So I'm gonna go ahead and wash everything, make sure it's nice and clean, no oil, no grease, no dirt. Then I'm gonna put some adhesion promoter on here and then spray it with some primer on these spots where I need it. On the belt moldings and the other parts, I'm just gonna go ahead and scuff them up, put some adhesion promoter, and then just put the SEM right on top of it. Next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna clean everything with some alcohol before I spray adhesion promoter. So the adhesion promoter, what you're supposed to do is put one thin light coat on here and then let it dry for 5 minutes, and then you put one wet coat and let it dry for like 15 minutes, but no more than 30 minutes before you coat it. So I decided to use 2 different trim blacks for this project. So the regular matte trim black I'm gonna do the moldings with, I'm gonna do the door handle stuff with, but I'm gonna use this gloss black right here. I'm gonna do that on the mirrors, the little mirror trims right there, and then the mirror mounts right there. I'm gonna try the gloss black to see how that turns out. I think that's gonna go much better with the paint of the car and everything with the gloss black. I've let it flash for about 15 minutes. So now I'm gonna go ahead and spray the primer onto this guy, let it dry, and then the rest of them I'm gonna go ahead and spray with the coating. It's getting dark, so I moved my stuff over here where there's a floodlight. So we let everything dry overnight. As you can see, everything turned out really nice. A nice matte satin finish, looks like the original. The gloss I used on the mirrors actually turned out a little bit more satin than gloss, which I was really aiming for because I didn't really want it to be high gloss. So it's good enough right now the way it is. So we're gonna go ahead and reassemble all this stuff together back with the original part so we can put it back on the car. So my Dupli-Color perfect match came in. This one is Graphite Grey Pearl, which is 1C6, which is the same color as my car over here. I've taped everything up as much as I could so I can actually paint those little spots there. Once I'm done with this, I'm gonna tape the door handles and paint around those door handles just to clean them up a little bit so they look a little bit better and have none of the blue showing when I'm done. So I got it sprayed on there. It came out pretty good, very easy. This kind of reminds me of the paint I used to use when I did model cars way back when I was a kid. That's what the tester's paint, that's what it smells like. But it goes on pretty metallic for the color. And we're pretty good here. I'm gonna let this dry, unmask it, and then do the door handles next. So I peeled off everything, and that color match from that Dupli-Color turned out really good for these minor touch-ups, especially up here where it used to be blue and around the door handles. You can even tell, other than it doesn't have any clear coat or gloss on it, but other than that, the color looks really good, matches really well for what it is. Perfect for all these little details around the door handles and everything that I try to hide, you know, just for the faulty paint job or the crappy paint job that they had before. So I got everything reassembled on my mirrors and everything. I never realized my mirrors were also auto dimming just because of how dark the tint is on the car. I've never seen them actually work, but they're actual auto dimming. I redid everything. The electrical is all done with new 3M electrical tape. I redid all the edges. You can see everything looks nice and clean and new now, like almost brand new with all the shiny edges and the shiny trim. On the door handles, I actually put it all back together. You can see the trim. It's nice and clean now. It's a black trim instead of the color match. Can't really tell on this color, but you know, just another one of those anal things that I like to do. All right, guys, I ran into a little bit of problem. I snapped this in, and I was a little bit too forceful with the rod, and I snapped this little ring right here that holds the actual rod on here, so I really screwed this thing up. And this appears to be a common problem because I was trying to look on eBay for replacements, and every one of them I've seen has this broken. That's cheap, and the ones that do have it are mostly for the other doors, not the driver's door. So now I'm kind of screwed. I'm gonna try to fix it with some wire right now. I might have to order a new one right now. Bell Lexus has a sale, and it's only $100 to get one that's already painted the same color. I might have to do that, but freaking rookie mistake right here, guys. All right, I did a little bit of a ghetto rig using some steel wire I had here. Hopefully it holds. I put 2 pieces of it through. There's a hole where the spring goes. So I looped it through there, and I twisted it around through this bushing. Hopefully when I snap the rod in the bushing, get some pressure on it and it holds this cable. But hopefully this works and I don't have to buy a new one, but I'll see how it goes.
Work as a guide to memories that we're making tonight. Oh yeah, we'll make it tonight. Yeah. I'll do anything that I feel like I wanna do. I'm living life like I got nothing left to prove. No end in sight, just always staying on the move. I'll go all night if that's just what I gotta do. Life's too short to care about what you can't afford. Memories are in what you explore, so just don't be ignored. Go ask for more, go ask for more. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? I'll just breathe in. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this project. As you can see, doing these trims makes the side of these things look a lot better. It looks a lot cleaner now than when I first got this car. Everything looks good now. So the next thing I'm gonna be doing is refurbing the wipers, changing out these ugly old wipers for the 2IS type wipers. I'm gonna be replacing the cowl. So on my next episode on this car, I'm gonna be taking care of that along with the rear wiper. Slowly getting the exterior of this thing refurbed. And once all my parts come in, I'm gonna start doing some other projects. Probably finish my brake project and all the other things that I had started on this thing like a year ago and kind of postponed or put off. Anyway guys, if you found this video useful for your project, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel. Turn on bell notifications to be notified every time I upload a video. Remember guys, for any of these projects, whether it's on the IS300, the IS250, the minivan, in the garage, whatever, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you guys for watching all the way to the end, and I'll talk to you guys next time.